You fall asleep and they drive you home. You're too faded. I wait shit as nothing coincides with me. Relativity is polarized. If you would know in the side, I will know in the mind. Your income is what you will always have to replenish. So what you do, you be using that mind because integrity is in you. But anyways, what was I saying? Before I left out. Oh, that's what I was about to say when I returned. Um, so I basically was on the urge priority, you know. I was prioritizing to fight these urges. But as I started to really think about myself and what I'm doing, really taking notes of what I'm doing, and acknowledging myself as me and no one else, and not even the motherfucking chromosomal genome that contributed to the accumulation of me. I digressionally consider letting you gutter it. The way that you think, the way that you're in denial, the way that you haven't even truly fucking assessed the whole entire decode. As I digress about this bad habit that I actually started to want to kick again, I just can't believe that I shouldn't profess my indifference. Seeing as some individuals despite the contrary beliefs and the popular demands, I acknowledge some people's sorrows aren't mine to bear. And so as I can't, I realize that I'm not the only one who's naive. But I know I'm not the one that's stupid in love. And so I kind of feel bad to pity her. The wife of this denial and everything this denial has in its pull and reciprocation to them. And the lack thereof of gratitude shown from whoever it might be and whatever it might be lacking. It can't necessarily refrain its own reputation or reframe its own reputation. The prosperity held in contraction to the introduction. What, bitch? What is the introduction? The trajectory of interjecting is more obtuse to the acute that an Andre would actually allow to alchemize without necessarily insinuating or perceiving stupidity, retardation, or jealousy. Let me add the word enacting. I'm blind to the love inside of me because of how detached in an unauthorized, attached way I am to humanity alone. In a societal progression, democracy is the backbone of a lot of marks or stains that we deize or no, idolize in thesis to our own existence. And so, as we progress without detrimenting the evolutional intent that came before the modernization of evolution, we have to be considerate of the lack thereof of patience that we have for the journey alone. An acknowledgement of the journey helps an acknowledgement of the belief. Misinformation and misguidance confuses not just one in the group, but confuses the whole entirety of the group. So, contrary to popular demanding, it's an inner battle. Like a mulatto, I'm telling you, bitch, I'm monochrome. Well, chromatically, it's trauma that I can't caramelize the same way in my coffee as I do on my logo. But as your logo is pretty fucking caramel compared to my mocha caramel fluorescence of Blaze, because you know, I love Blaze. The raising and upbringing of this caramelized deity is a crutch, a shoulder, an honored admiration. Being someone that doesn't necessarily want the entitlement, but have been giving so much fortunates and wisdom through experience is honestly like I'm fangirling, just actually acknowledging how much people genuinely are rooting for me, and I still am blind to a lot of the sentimentality, but the sentiments, or you know, the nuances, the subliminalizations, I'm still kind of very blind to a lot of them. So I kind of genuinely be wanting to go back and reassess. Yet I don't be in the right group. Or I do be in the right group and the environmental intake differs from the group that I bestow in. And as it differs, it comes off to be a contradiction, as the hypnotic persuasion doesn't really have much leverage over the cloud as it darkens. My doorstep. It darkens the cloud's presence as the presence of the cloud itself is the shade that hazes my perception. And so, as the insinuation of senses not being connectivity, the neuronic, the neurology, the neuronic, the neuros ironics is like a dinero, a guapo, a currency that cries as it is paid with time. They're off, but they better think. Hopefully. I hope I find some penis. I really hope that I find some penis because I'm just tired of just like the denials. I'm tired of the denials and the insinuation of me being in denial because of your denials. Like, I'm just really tired of it. I know what the fuck I want in life, and it might not be what I deserve in the eyes of men, but men might in their own way. They creep in their own vines. So, men might not know how much deservance of such detriment should be of deliverance unto men itself. And as men has a lot of motherfucking ransom for the cosmetic Solarian fatality. In reception of reciprocation. The departure doesn't really rap the same way, okay? It's a different rep. But before the departure bestows me, and I bestow you of my presence or connotations, conveyances, I want you to know this. The ancient civilization of my cognizant, cerebral, seems to be reminiscent of a lot of things that we haven't interpreted to be extraterrestrial. I feel like a lot of the receptivity that was conditioned in such a groomed way was thus. A level of sentimentality or pity that is so empathetically sympathetic that it seems very, very distant. Not even in the circumstances of velocity, but more in a circumstantial acknowledgement of just the setting being in a timely manner and not a environmental matter. So, sympathetically, the empathy can only remain in sympathetics because as they're empathetic, they are in reminiscence of conditions that isn't necessarily of their currency. And so as they jump or they over police the stimulant of their self, like the stimulation of who they are, in denial of a contrary popular demand. There's too much that you can't triumph with if you keep playing the same card, where you don't really care whether or not you think you just want what you want. Yet, as time shows, you waste your respect for yourself on the respect that you don't have for others. And so, as you're not happy with who you are, I have contentment for who I became, especially after analyzing the psychosis of such skits that weren't even present in my existence, not even metaphorically speaking, didn't have any bearing towards influentially being present. The connection that I've bestowed well before the embodiment of my presence became interactive with the contact of your actual presence. I've been in reluctance towards the energy of war in a keen way, with such uncouth, that the promoted promises will not be vain. So I will choose vanity over my urge. And you'll still contradict me in my vulnerability. And I'll stress the digress of your contributions. As if you're out of my technicality, the colors of this vivid consideration can't coincide with such inclined insinuation. And coincidentally speaking, with a coincidental acknowledgement of denial, you defile me. And so, as you defile me, you still yet to persuade yourself as belief of your faith is like a fucking detrimental security for your insecure contributions. It's like an evaluation of psychosis and manic. genomes that has contributed to one another's enabling. So to really break it down, in historical tenses, the ancients differ from Asian to European ancients, as the ancients differ from Asian to European. The basis of those ancients contribute in a commune that is otherworldly in a certain way. It can be a bit abstract. The way we overcomplicate the most simplest things with our anxious, stigmatic conditions can really hold us back from enlightening ourselves or being enlightened by our own ignorance. Choosing to have naivety towards your own reasoning could be the main reason that denial can't prosper from a disregarded lover. Denial cannot sense the detriment inside of the awareness of itself, as the denial is in regard towards the disregard that the prosperity experienced by thus influences the boundary and base of instability and the compromising complication that is contextually a contradictory labyrinth of someone else's slope of demised rhetoric. As the evaluation is mentally in surrealism, the realism that is so surreal does not necessarily disregard the veil. So as you can't necessarily see through the glasses that is yours, you stay in contact with humanity in a way at which you can clearly have some type of boundary to protect your being from the gazes that bind you to your words. It's hard to really see you eye to eye when you're so high that your eyes kind of want to detach from how you see. Want to detach the perception that coincides within you to make you so pessimistic that the secure insecurity that you entitle to be, I don't know, a maturitized point of view doesn't commonly alchemize the same way in different conditioning. So it is the phone. It is the game of telephone communication and interpretation isn't necessarily something that can be psychologically analyzed in a way that contributes to initializing the finances of someone's mathematical approach to a confusion that is contrary to popular demand, a contribution to the majoritized denial. In actualization, it's hard to wish an enemy well as the internet fails to reach me. It's hard to wish an enemy well as I fail to be close to you. It's never ending how in ever more there's too much heights being in contribution towards the jackal's majoritized denial. It's too much more that I could ever be inclined to be reciprocal towards as the internet tries to reach me. By unpopular demand, I demand to be very much in the demeanor of a deceiver. As a deceiver, I descend, but I don't edit. I debug the code. As the streets wants a wall up, I cry with paid time off. Um, to have my carry on as I carry on, okay? Not going past row 6, hopefully. I contemplate better things yet again. And the only better thing that I am contemplating is the demeanor that I had before departing from someone else's intentional misguidance. And so, as I divulge myself or devote myself into the hold on, wait, divulge, what, divulge. I'm trying to figure out what the fuck I was trying to say. Dividend, distinguish, divulge, divulge. Hold up. Divulge. Oh, is it asking me a question? Why don't it get what it is? As I devote myself to devoting inside a triumphantly bulge. Is that what? No, stupid. No, don't get angry. Have patience. This is Kuth, not Goof. So divulge. You wanna know something silly? I can't see Missouri. Something that's silly. I'm gonna have to do what this is telling me to do. But something that is silly that we don't necessarily focus on is how we can be our own motivation in life, where we can have community without even necessarily showing our face in the streets. Like, we can have community without necessarily leaving our comfort zone. And so, as we embarked upon this whole into, I detach and disassociate from wholeness in a stillness in ways that kind of doesn't disembody or embark upon the same contribution. So, like, when I can't be easy for you because I choose not to, it's never easy for you to really be yourself because who you are, you don't really like. And so when I have to be a mentor to my own self, because the metaphorical undertones doesn't really bring confidence to my contribution and my interest in life, I don't really care if you're angry. I don't really care if you think I don't pull my own weight. I do care that I have time to chase because you wasted it. I do care that what you say doesn't have any fucking control over whether or not you can control what you don't have anymore. When you are in sorrow because you are in grievance of what it is that you're losing, because you can't necessarily see how the perspectives are juggling the intentions of crush culture, then you can't XOXO to my Y2K and try to tell my Y2K how unfucking, I don't know, whatever your insinuation for yourself and your denials describe you to be. In the projection, I authenticize how I can't necessarily contribute to the disbelief, especially when it's not in my interest for me to be the best. It's in my every fucking devotion to know I'm the best and to shine brighter than a diamond. When inspiration is something that you have to find within, like the love that people take for granted, you start to really take from those who exploited you. And you start to really mask things that makes you less than secure in your entire fucking relativity and lack thereof of it. So the isolations. I've never really acknowledged how out of touch mankind has been compared to how in touch they insinuate themselves to be. So as you put that in reverse, it seems to be the same fucking thing. Where your expectation of community and your entitlement of control differs from the narcissistic approach that holds a dated vanity. And so when that dated vanity honestly does contribute towards some very, very prominent fucking priorities that prioritizes me to prioritize myself, an existence with these individuals and who they once were, I start to prioritize the assertive uncertainty of certainties, deities in their own subjectivities. Are in pre-existence perspective. So when your cultural habitual differs and you start to descend, I hop on a saddle and jump into battle. Or I hop into battle and I jump on a saddle. Either way, the contribution is reciprocal. So my efficiency is enough. And I can't necessarily be in contradiction of myself without being in complete analyzation of the perception that is encounter of mind that doesn't necessarily want success to be me or doesn't necessarily want success to be bestowed by individuals like me, but yet the wealth that I embody in such an ancient wisdom is a finance that I can't take for granted. It's in solitude for good reason. And as the contributions and insinuations differ, the insinuation of the environmental does get sentimentally mental. When you're trying to latch onto me, and use my Szechuan sauce as my saka, don't Joey in thus. I don't know why Christopher don't rock his bob anymore, but I know why I don't clumb around us on that bus. Okay? As the columns is not the same between each and every tier, the rows differ too. So I don't column within the bus. You know what's the funniest part about the ancient wisdoms in history? It's completely fucking different. I love the conservatism of the ancient wisdoms, that is the Asian ancient wisdoms. It's always a trivial approach when there is a contribution towards commonality. And so, like, when we have to incite what is being insinuated in communication, we don't necessarily lead ourselves on to misinterpret. We listen and don't judge. And that's exactly what an individual should do, especially when it comes to situations that contributed to the detriment of denial and the rebuttals of rhetoricals and denials. So, as you deny to have any regard towards what it is that I just contributed to your aura, intake this, that in this environment, there is no TiVo, bitch. We don't have a fucking cable box. So there is no rewinding back to how low you have fied. There is no dialing back to how low you have fied. So the betrayal that you embody on yourself has not had any fucking bearing towards the burdens you've actually projected and incited through your actions. When you can't necessarily have any fucking truth towards how uncouthy you are with your coof, you can't necessarily say that you can be reciprocal or repetitive towards the defilement that you've caused, especially when you've incited to prove someone wrong in their own success. So, as you can't digress because you just simply don't, because you're a victim of it all, right? Or not, but we don't know. I yearn for the truth. I yearn for clarity so that the closure is something that my eulogy for mankind indicted upon thus. In a way at which the interpretation cannot be fully, efficiently contributed to without my consciousness being present. It's my soul is my consciousness, the vulnerability that some people define to be my demonization of myself is the contribution of men itself. As men mansplain their ignorance. The misogynistic ignorance varies from toxicity to toxicity. And as a deity of superposition, The wonderless questioned towards this individual leads me in Uzumaki and leads me to be more guiding towards the misinterpreted or those that has misinterpreted such intention. As I don't need to justify how, out of touch the communication is for, me, as I'm the one who should be getting used to the isolation that is bestowed. I must profess the isolation is my best friend. The isolation is the contribution towards the boredom. Meanwhile, the contribution towards the boredom is the stability that financially stabilizes my solitude, foundationalizing my logic without a lethargic nuance. And let me look up lethargic because I don't know what the fuck that means. I've been using that word all day. Affected by lethargy, sluggish or apathetic. I feel like procreation is lethargic. The act of procreating is lethargic. Or it can bring lethargy, seen as the mental health behind the conditions, the connotations, or the contractual, conditions from the mental health evaluation of such an act. Being, exalted in such an exhausting way can bring about depression and anxiety, burning a person out. The lack of factors could factor in ways that is detrimental. So me feeling bad for this person and the lethargy that he seemed to adapt it to is kind of like adequately the reason why I overexert, because it's kind of stressing me out. If this man is really more than who he provides me to know, then it really sucks. Really having to think about all of the work he will have to do just to get back to a person he once embodied. Like, this isn't a place in my head, or reach out your hand to tell me just what you feel. And it's just not just all in my head. Mind over matter makes these things feel so real. I can see the doubt in my mind. You say there's no much thing as better things in life. Well, I must confess that this is all too new for me, and a whole new world, but a whole new world to say. cannot think of this song by Paris, but I hear the lyrics on my tongue.
Hear ye! You just get more when you bundle and save at Bob's Discount Furniture. Like when you bundle my Bryn's sofa and love seat and save $179.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
I can't say the way to listen through my eyes. I can't pray and tell him everything to bring his body back to me. Those lyrics right now that I had just said, honestly, is kind of like the book that I read in jail. Yes, that's her. Sage Warrior. This is the lady. She wrote a book. And as I read the book while I was in jail, she was kind of speaking about like the things she'd been through in her life, where like her cousin or someone see no stranger, a memoir and a manifesto of revolutionary love, Valerie Carl. When I read this book about this lady and how she posed the way she does, the way she rocks it, is kind of just like my God, okay? It's like God is a woman at this point, and in this femininity, this man presenting is a person who embodies femininity in ways at which the femininity is an intuitive sense at which mother's intuition is like woman's intuition. And if men can't necessarily keep it in their pants, or if men can't necessarily stop trying to persuade people to be detrimental towards their own best interests just to inform their community of someone else and the lack thereof of contribution that this person might bring, meanwhile being in denial about what contributed from said individual with such a spiteful rhetoric towards someone else's success or lack thereof of it, can only be a detriment to the demise at which they have very much psychoanalyzed, to the point to where they can genuinely reference it from someone else's life's experiences, reasons as to why I brought up the book, memoir, manifesto of revolutionary love. This lady is a Sycan descent. She is not Muslim, but she kind of has the same cultural indifferences as Muslims do. So as it was like 9/11, the beginning of Y2K, she was very much acknowledging how either it was her father or her cousin um, was being discriminated against just because of the terroristic attacks incited by Osama bin Laden's team or something. I want to say it, but I don't want to be wrong. So I'm just not going to say who I think they might be now or whatever. But the point of the matter is, as she faced such discriminations, I took it into context and not necessarily empathized, but not fully sympathized. Because in a sympathetic way, there's more empathy towards her story that I feel than anything else. I can't necessarily be sympathetic because I don't necessarily pity her. So I empathize with this lady in ways at which a lot of women would contradict. And so it makes me want to be overly protective of myself, but also be selfish because of my naivety. Me acknowledging how I can lead myself on to distract myself from what's demised in my eyes, what's detrimental to my cerebral capacity, only so that I don't fall victim to the dull reality that is being insecure. As my ego, it finds bliss. I find it to be my most contribution. Like, it's a demise, but it's a contribution to I assess myself in a way to where I asset off of my bliss within my ego. And so, as I find bliss within my ego, my vulnerability, depending on the consensuality, is my biggest strength. But it can be my biggest detriment, especially when contextually speaking, the consensual endowment isn't something that you embody for me, where you basically see yourself in reflection of what type of human you are, while judging another human and dehumanizing that human, and not seeing the lack of humanity in yourself. It's like there's so much that I can really say about just men in the way that the contribution of history doesn't really have an interest in at which it was professed, especially in some democratic evaluations. Some people can't necessarily say that the contribution of men is contributor towards the fucking contrary belief, at which, consistency is something that men contradict. Because when you really sit back and you acknowledge where the democracy could be more socialized in a way to where irony doesn't necessarily misguide individuals to interpret things in ways at which it doesn't bring light. And if it does bring light, the lore is insane. So we got to level out the lore that is not said. We got to really evaluate under the bridge, because if we can't necessarily see how the edits are being professed or being presented onto people's insightfulness, then the contribution to humanity will be the opposite of what it is that's intended from my pureness in every intent. And I honestly don't wish that for us. I don't wish for the hue to be red in the way that we reflect through the retina. I don't want for it to be shadows in all of the way that I see myself falling under pressure. I don't want my infrareds to be my reality. So I have a sense of entitlement to the power trips. I have a sense of entitlement to keep the consistent power trips on my motherfucking evaluation doc. As I evaluate or analyze these infrareds, the acknowledgement of these infrareds might actually send me into a spiral, but I'm used to the merging. So you being reluctant towards my actual contributions isn't really advocating for financial stability. So when you invest in me, you only invest sweet nothings that I have to analyze and balance to an unconventional sense because of my cried paid time off being less than a crypto and more of encrypted. But as a lot of things are not found tangibly, there is an NFT of my own that I want to sell you. And it's a dream. It's a dream. It doesn't consist of a pipe. It actually consists of a whole being created from a pipe. And if you don't like my dream that I bestow upon myself, that I want for myself, then you don't like the logic or the theories or the hypothesis that has went into a lot of scientific approaches that has really contributed to the curing of diseases or whatever the hell else that is a viral. Contribution towards contracting something unhealthy. When your insightfulness is in an insinuation of gutterous pessimism, as you kind of don't trust anyone, you honestly fight to trust someone only for others to acknowledge where the trust they had to find in their self most definitely wasn't taken for granted or underappreciated. As for your value of it, was the potential of yourself. And so having to break the spell that you put on others with your projection in ways at which it does contribute to annoyance and lack of patience, but that contribution really does go into the places that it's most fitting. The assertion might be a Kelly Bundy, because you know that bitch is windy, like as if Farrah was on her faucet, but she really ain't. It always brings some type of vivid nuance that contributes to what it has been combating: the contradiction and distraction of being man, and the power trip of being woman. It's very inspirational. Being able to embody both male and female confidence is honestly very, very widely subjective. It's very, very widely subjective. Like, you can be confident enough to know what it is that you want to do in life, but having the means to do so could be the lack of confidence that you have in life. Like, having the means to persuade people to have patience towards how koofy my koof, or how koofy my koof receives and contributes in reciprocation with a reversed reverb. Ad-lib, interlude. Interlude, ad-lib. So there is no rehearsal. As much as often as desired, so yearned, spoken or performed without previous preparation or rehearsal, occurring, used, or distributed as often as necessary or desired, so common sense, contribution, commonality, spoken or speaking from a performative or performed public community without a previous or initial or in advance preparation. Movement in art and literature at which is sought to have release towards a creative potential of such unconsciousness within the mind. Examples being irration towards juxtaposition by the irrational juxtaposition. Practice of accepting the situation as it is and being prepared to deal with the advancements. In such qualities, the facts of the representing individual is like a thing or just a situation that accurately has way, as if that is true to life. The concern for a fact as the reality or the rejection of the impractical visionary gives doctrine that universals exist outside of the mind. Existential. Relating to existence, so concerned with the existence, especially humanity, human existence, viewed in such of an existentialism hypotheticals of a proposition, affirming or implication, like Trappist. It's an implication that humanity could also be in coexistence with one another, like Mars and Scorpio is. Well, like with Aries and Scorpio is on Mars. Just like with Aries and Scorpio is on Mars, Sagittarius is kind of like Capricorn in the contribution of Capricorn and Aquarius, but Capricorn and Aquarius are kind of one of the same, one of ones of an nymphalic existence that is existentially unconventional. And so the implications or examples of humanity seems to be Venus and Mercury. And as Venus is governed by Gemini and Virgo, Oh wait, no. Taurus is Taurus and Libra. So Venus is governed by Taurus and Libra. Libra not necessarily being a representation of humanoid beings holds a pressure of intensity and the same density and matter accumulation. Of our planet that we reside. And so, as the representation of Libra is the representation of love, and also the representation of balance, the contribution of dualism in Mercury's sense is the intensity of the lack thereof of love on Mercury alone, the lack thereof of humanoids in existence on Mercury alone. And so when the logic isn't irrational, the basis of someone's bias can be contributive towards popular or unpopular demand, or both at the same time. Seeing as I'm a Libra moon, I don't necessarily have to be two-faced because I'm not being insecure about whether or not I'm bitter. I'm taking account to the fact that I am bitter, but I'm also taking into account of what is making me bitter. And so the density of my lucidity or lucidity is bound to set boundary, bound to set intention and intent in a way at which it does catch the words, acknowledge the team, clicks the click. So existentials in midlife crises. I see the difference. So emotional turmoil. As an individual is middle-aged, the choices and identity of their morality is often the leading feeling of this dissatisfaction as a change is desired. The popular concepts of these research hypothesis indicates such as that of only minority the people of experience is a significant crisis. As for some, even to be seen in midlife as a peak time, the achievement of confidence, the strategy of coping, contributes towards seeking professional help, as thus tries talking onto a trusted friend. The activity of staying is making me realistically change impulsivity to avoid making small decisions that alters my life. So as I'm restless with the dissatisfaction, the unfulfillment is no longer satisfying, as my decision is to doubt the past choice in regards of relation and priority, the depression and anxious swings is a concern mortality longs for. Yet, a desire of sudden drastic change can honestly engage in such expensive, impulsive spending in order to acknowledge the compulsion. Discuss your feelings, list accomplishments, and get a realistic view. Avoid drastic, impulsive decisions. Small changes and new habits will bring contribution. As the practice of self is to actively stay in engagement, as the mental exercise is an activity. New minds are good. New looks and new clothes are good. As therapy and doctrines could differentiate between life, mid, and ISIS, why cry about what it is that you press when you depress the other mental health as it's your issue? The crisis that you bestow might be a transition of identity and self-confidence that occurs only in the ages of mid. So as an individual, typically it's like a midlife crisis is a Mercury retrograde. It's a time to evaluate whether or not it's a Pisces or Cancer's moon and evaluate the emotional turmoil or turbulence of such experiences. If such experiences leaves life questioning the dissatisfaction that comes about from the anxious depression that had bestowed such period of transition could make someone see the struggles of their own identity and self-confidence, leaving that individual insecure. Written with flaws, as if described, this is a full of flaw, imperfection, meaning imperfection or defect. As unwanted, my vulnerabilities develop, invokes such numerous security and new software debug. Entomology combines flaw and imperfection and written. As it's filled with imperfection, the usage of it is used to describe such a defective imperfection at which you contain your many desirable features. Might be a compound of imperfections. Automation of education in the long term, flaw ridden half solution, or epoch making game changer. I'm just going to read the abstract, okay? Automation of education in long term, flaw ridden half solution, or epoch making game changer. 11 pages, posted on the 24th of February in 2025 by Suje Rael Mandavili, an independent researcher. The date it was written was on January 25th of 2025. Abstract. The objective of this paper is to critically examine whether automation of education, either fully or partially, will be viable or feasible in the long term. Do you halfway learn or do you fully learn? And what you have learned, does it stick? We begin this paper by defining the pedagogy, We begin this paper by defining what pedagogy is and tracing its origin, history, and development over time. We then examine language acquisition theories, both first and second, how they have either impact or constrained pedagogical theory. We also then review the technology of educational computer-based contribution of education, and such a review must be in trace of each complication so that their history, the role of the artificial educational technology and basis of education is an examination of, its current successes, while the challenges of education is an importance of ethnography. The role that pedagogy reviews is an examination in carrying out the evidences that is based on such data driven by a metric driven outcome, at which may also be carried on. As yet, many of the kinds of automation seeks education through the reviewed. There is a need for a human touch as a practical and pragmatic approach reiterates and emphasized the role of importance educational infrastructure and in realization of approach. Such goals of such emphasized can't we see what concludes as that, while we have a long way to go before dreaming of such goals for ourselves, being meaningful and comprehensive towards the debate in rebuttal of a can, of course, yet you can be constituted right away. So, in hope of the expectance at which this paper must be an important gog for the wheel over me in our globalization with scientific movement contributes critically as analyzation towards whether the approaches drive education or contributes to the development of countries in long term and or just optimizes human capital. So let me read this again. The objective of this paper is to critically examine whether automation of education is either fully or partially viable and or feasible in such a long-term manner. So as we begin, this paper must be defined in a pedagogy, tracing its origin and its historical development over time. We have to examine the language barriers as an acquisition does theorize with hypotenuses that doesn't hypothetically put both first and second. Instead, a how, whether they have either impact or been impacted by such constrained pedagogical theory. These individuals must stay in review of the educational technology at which the base is computerized, their education as a review and trace of such histories. The roles of artificial education is in education of those who examine thoroughly, and as those of examination of its successes, the challenges at which education admissions and omissions, the importance of such ethnography shows its role in the pedagogy, along with the review of the examination and carrying out evidence-based driven data as such a metric that drives the outcome at which one should be carried on. Now, the cons of the automation of education are also reviewed, and the need of a human touch in a practical, pragmatic approach reiterated and emphasized. The role and importance of an individual is an infrastructure of realizing such goals is also emphasized, and we conclude that we have a long way to go before dreaming of such goals. A meaningful and a comprehensive debate can, of course, be constituted right away, yet we hope and expect that this paper will be an important cog in the wheel of our globalization of science movement and keep hope so that we can help, so that it can help, and as it can help, it is critically analyzed whether such gaps or approaches can drive education and developing to have a development towards the developing countries in a way of longevity to have an optimization separate from humanity, inhumanity as a capital, a pillar in my community. Why do they keep... But anyways, there's some words that I need to Google. Like this one. Valuable is like validation, right? And feasible is kind of just like creditable, right? Oh, practical. Likely, probable, credible. Okay. Viable, capable of working successfully, feasible. So contributive. Pedagogy. The method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or theoretical concept. So, using hypotheses in a way that is improvisational. Okay, that's what that basically seems to be in the way that I'm interpreting what pedagogy is. The practice of learning and how the process influences and is influenced by the social, political, and psychological development of learners. So if someone is socially vulnerable, then that social anxiety would trigger the anxious sporadicness of an individual and kind of show you exactly what developments is stunted, regardless of how much actual experience they have towards their charismatic, contribution with communicating with someone. A person of a certain subjectivity and theoretical concept can still be anxious and ridden with flaws verbally, especially if their confidence is stunted due to it being devoted in directions at which the common psychology will understand to be uncommon. So, let's find these other words. It's really strange. I have a lot to say right now. Ethnography, the scientific description of a custom or the customs of individuals, peoples, and cultures. So, honestly, what this is saying to me is that me and my naivety and my abstractness is just my acknowledgement of humanity alone, and how the perspective that I have subjectively isn't the perspective of humanity in whole. It's just the subjectivity at which my trauma or my experiences or my vulnerability has subjected me to. So my perception on cultures, or the anthropology of cultures, anthropology and anthropology is two different things. the study of humans and their culture, and ethnology is a description of customs. So customs is the conventionality of these individuals and their culture. And anthropology is the study of the inconventional societal biology and language of individuals that are developed differently from an encompassing biology. Okay. Now, let's use our unique collection of words and vocabularies and glossaries to really evaluate whether or not you can establish someone else's solitude in such an irrational acknowledgement and alone. Yeah, let's try to find the method of practicing what it is that I teach, especially in an academic, subjective, theoretical concept. When people say, take your own advice, but it's advices that was given onto you from previous generations, do you think it's something that people are in debt towards or with or from charismatically? When history does literally repeat itself, and we can't necessarily prove the insights or the sources, but we can trust ourselves to know that our intuition isn't misguiding us intentionally, and we can trust to know the tone and the differences of each tone. Like, to give you insight on the battles, the inner battles that I'm having, it's like I contribute to my own happiness. And as I contribute to my own happiness, there is an insight for me to be considerate towards someone else's happiness. Meanwhile, the consideration for this individual's happiness is a lack thereof of consideration towards my own happiness, genuinely contributing to contradictory stagnation, make me less content and more on the course of discourse or disbelief or daunt. So as individuals, they intend to contain me in their own denial or delusion. So denial of institutionalized, systematic in justification contributes towards the insinuation that wasn't even insinuated. It's more of just proven by the proof of history itself, where we all actually can't blame other people for our own omissions. That an unconventional placement or conventional consistency might come differently in a different consistency. So when I say that my intuition is my cash, I mean it. Your integrity is your currency, the way that you, reciprocate. And how you reciprocate and who you contribute towards during the reciprocation. It has to be a coordinate. If you are underappreciative or taking individuals for granted, and you're disregarding your own awareness of yourself, you're kind of consciously contributing towards your own split. You're consciously contributing towards your disassociation from your own vessel, contributing towards your own detriment as you wish for better days. But the good days you have in advance is really already taken for granted. As I acknowledge that your selfishness doesn't really establish my logic. And so when emotionally being equipped with my own denial of myself, I am very much saddened and sad as fuck. I am very much content with my depression because I have to be insightful. Acknowledging all of these other civilizations and third worlds that overcomes their impoverished experience of life every single day and still continues to carry on and consist on their self-awareness within their own commune, their own unity, their own world, their own land. They don't necessarily care about the materialistic tangibility that a lot of materialistic vanity has adapted to. And so acknowledging those individuals and them being grateful for the little they do have, it really keeps me in touch with what I hope for and what I honestly yearn for, in contribution of my selfishness to be selfless towards those that I promised that I am really doing my best for, even though they might very much don't even see the weight that I carry, or the baggage that I walk in with these fucking cases full of sins. My feet is above thee, and the contribution towards my own insecurity. And as I have to stay very humility. I have to stay very humble in my humility of this humidity alone, and the lack thereof of it. Because in the whole sense of the coastals, it's bi-coastal and not so bi-curious. How vicariously speaking, the unconventional individual of such expansive rhetoric chose to embark himself and stretch himself, thus contributing to his own confusion. I vaguely can't really steer your autobiography because you're the drone, you're the fucking AI that is intelligent of the subjectivity that is your perspective. So when I speak in all fucking truth with this fucking prosperity that contributed towards me and my vulnerability and the practicalities that actually is problematic towards my success, it does actually bring some type of comprehensiveness towards my debating of these courses in rebuttal without the rhetoricals, but of a different rhetoric. The implications alone, though, the rumors, it relies on the alignment of one another, as if it's like in the what is it, the Armageddon, as if it's in the under. It also has a surface and it's red, and so as we're in our warlike conduits, the reception of the bandwidth and the upspeed doesn't really consist with the downspeed. The downspeed, or the load that is down, stiffens and hardens. And as we all constitutionally want to be adept to what it is that we don't necessarily want to know, there's no reason to really overindulge ourselves into acknowledging how the contribution of mankind took for granted some damn fucking afro that couldn't diet the same way that, popular beliefs flatten upon their own wavy mane. As I see with 4 different conduits at once, the positions of suplex or surplex, super, detachment attaches itself to the contribution of societal norms being the initial problematic barrier of communication and contribution of reciprocation. The fact that we root for the anti-hero while being the underdog, we contradict ourselves in our polarity alone in ways that kind of makes it relatable. Where right now I might very much think I'm misunderstanding or misinterpreting. In a week or two of just me not necessarily focusing on, in your perspective, their abstract complexities or complications, might be very enlightening in a week or two, as my perception on these individuals or this individual changes rapidly due to the lack thereof of disguise and their mask that they use within their thick skin as their ego. It's really hard to be kept or to be saved from the contribution of such promoted, contradicted advocacies. There can't be a contribution. Because as we don't necessarily know what vague connotation specifically, I irrationalized impractically. I acknowledge the positions, and I acknowledge how you'll pick up the paces that I couldn't necessarily prevent myself from being vulnerable around. And hopefully you use a better glossary or a better subliminalization towards my complexities and the way that my contextual gaze isn't contractually contributing towards, the detriment or the demise of mankind. If men could be more receptive towards how they acknowledge their countersuit, then they would acknowledge how much power they lack or they prevent for themselves and others. Having an envious rhetoric towards an individual doesn't open doors or bring adornance towards yourself. So, adornance of others is adornance of myself. Open doors within myself. Adornance of you, it opens doors within myself. And that's one thing that crush culture has very much taught me. And so with that, I have to say, self-care. Love yourself as yourself. Use a mirror. Show your wealth. And tell yourself that you love you. Because as I love me, I don't like the same old love that has contributed to the same old things, the same old contradictions, the same old hypotheses of contradictions. So love yourself, because no one else can truly love you exactly how you love you. And if love is not your epitome, as love should be within you and not externally within you, then you and I have two completely different perspectives on the subjectivity at which love is. And so when I say that you are my heart, or when someone says that I am their heart, it does leave me in concern about whether or not I've been loving the wrong people for too long. Or I've been not loving myself. Because who we became to be as a society in a whole, which is mankind, we kind of juggle our circumstances with one another like it's a hot potato, and we toss it around the room to really get some traction on this potato. We're trying to see how far this potato can get us, how far we can rationalize, or not even rationalize. Yeah, rationalize this potato, how long we can keep this potato, how long this potato can nourish or bring nutrients to us. Keep contributing to the potato.